This is Captain Albert Wesker of S.T.A.R.S Alpha Team, and you're watching Let's Talk Resident Evil.
What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. And man, we have a big month to talk about here on today's episode of the show. It's been a month of Resident Evil, that's for sure. So in this episode of the show, I'm going to discuss everything that's been going on in June, because we got hit with Resident Evil 4. I went to the UK for the Resident Evil Challenger UK Meetup, and the Capcom Showcase happened. So a bunch of goodies have been being announced, trips have been happening, and of course I've been covering all the news every step of the way. There's also a, Resident Evil Netflix show coming in 2 weeks, so I will also be covering that in a podcast episode, but I don't know how I'm going to approach reviewing that series yet. I might just do a podcast episode because I think it might be released all in bulk. Kind of like Stranger Things, where it's just like released and you have to watch it all and make sure you're not spoiled before it gets spoiled. But anyway, that's how I'm going to approach that. So yes, between June and July, it is officially the summer of RE, and that is also a series that I kind of kicked off. Isn't really a series to anything specific. It's just going to be the summer series of content that is videos, podcasts, reviews, just a bunch of stuff, and obviously the coverage of new Resident Evil stuff. It's been kind of obviously getting a resurgence of people that are kind of going back and playing the old games and everything. So that's kind of what the month of June had, right? So we're going to go in order here through the events that have happened. The first thing was the State of Play. So the State of Play and the Resident Evil 4 Remake announcement. Now, this is one of those things where I was really shocked that they announced this so soon before the Village DLC, considering the DLC was announced a few weeks later, and they didn't do it reverse. But because that's what I thought they were going to do. But, they got to do what they got to do. It's not a bad thing that we got it as far as the cutscenes and the little cinematics that we've seen. It looks pretty good. Obviously the gameplay was very minimal, but we'll talk about that when I talk about the Capcom Showcase. As far as the trailer and the press release, Resident Evil 4 Remake, in my opinion, looks pretty solid. And I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4, I did a memories video on Resident Evil 4, kind of discussing my memories and the attachment that I have to Resident Evil 4. And I think that holds a lot of weight on people when they see a remake of something that they like, and it's very sensitive because you don't know if you're gonna change too much, change too little. You're trying to make different pockets of fans happy, so it's always going to be somewhat of a struggle to kind of keep that middle ground. And the thing is with that is Resident Evil 4 was a turning point for gaming. Resident Evil 4 really reinvented the wheel, period, for the next years to come in gaming when it comes to third-person shooters and different series and franchises. And so it's a big game. It's pretty much the biggest remake, endeavor that they've had to take here, even bigger than Resident Evil 2. I think that this as far as how it impacted the culture, Resident Evil has done it in multiple titles. But Resident Evil 4 really brought in the casual audience, the people that maybe didn't play the Resident Evil games before, and they got adapted to that play style, or they just didn't play it at all because you couldn't, move and shoot or do whatever. So everyone always had excuses for not playing survival horror games. Some people, they could have been too scared. The controls, it is what it is. Right? I don't care. You could play whatever version of Resident Evil you want to play. But the main point that I'm trying to make here is that Resident Evil 4 is really it is one of the best games ever made, in my opinion. It's up there. It doesn't have the most perfect, pitch perfect story. It doesn't do everything 100% well, but as far as a gameplay and game mechanics and how like smooth it was when it came out, like none of that shit even mattered, to be honest, back in the day. It was all good. It was just like you're playing it and you're like, this is 10 out of 10, right? I think a lot of people hold that still to this very day. And, obviously there's still problems with it, but I think because other aspects were so good, it didn't matter. And it's not like at the end of the day, the story was the worst thing ever made. We still had Leon, we still had Ada, we still had our original characters, and they brought in different villains like, Albert Wesker from the original, but even though he was in the background, right? But we got a great selection of BOWs, a great selection of, enemy variety, really creepy elements. But the one thing that I always didn't like at the original Resident Evil 4 was the island bit. I always thought the island was when the pacing got a little weird. I was kind of getting annoyed that I was getting shot at by, Gatling guns and bow guns and everything. It kind of seemed to be, and then you had the regenerators in there, which were awesome, but it never really seemed to like be full on horror all the way through. I don't mind, peppering in the action elements because I thought that the idea of melees and the idea of, the quick time events that they had at the time, which were obviously very fast paced because you have to be on it, right? You have to be paying attention. The merchant idea of expanding the arsenal and going back for upgrades, and there's a bunch of files and there's extra things you can do. That was very much appreciated, from us fans to get something that was, actually refreshing. But I know a lot of people look at Resident Evil 4 and they know that that's when things started to change for Resident Evil. Or some people say it took a downturn from what it used to be. And it definitely started to push in that action elements, right? And we definitely saw the movies kind of start to influence the games a little bit. We had the laser scene of Resident Evil 4 that was directly taken from Paul Anderson's film. So we started to see that cross where everything was getting successful on the media side of things, the game side of things. They wanted to keep it refreshing. And I think they did what they had to keep it refreshing. I really think that they did a great job, to this very day. And those little things that us fans might have issues with, or the nitpicks that we have, where we don't really think that it's, it could have been tweaked here, this could have been taken out. The remake really does open that opportunity. It's not like the, originals are going anywhere, right? You could still play them. But will this be as impactful as the original Resident Evil 4? Well, Resident Evil 4, I think, is, that's the reason why you have the third person angle in those Resident Evil games. So now that it's coming all the way back full circle to where it all began, where everything started to kind of, clean the slate, they can make still just as big of an impact because now you can move and shoot. You have the RE engine, you have the different angles, right? You have the immersive graphics, and you have these realistic enemies that have, realistic ways of acting, right? Like they'll surround, Leon. They'll actually show when they get hurt on certain limbs and stuff like that. Like all those little things that Resident Evil 4 started to do, now it finally becomes full circle, and now it's trying to show off what Resident Evil has accomplished since 2005. This is a real big remake. This is the biggest remake that, in my opinion, you're going to see. I think that this is going to be better than Resident Evil 2. I think it's going to be better than Resident Evil 3. Now, my favorite Resident Evil is, as far as remake, is the original Resident Evil remake from 2002. And that is my favorite remake of all time. One of my favorite Resident Evil games, just because I like fixed camera angles. That's how I prefer to play Resident Evil. That's why the trilogy is also my favorite. So, but again, I could still appreciate all the different perspectives of the games and the eras. And, I just remember being so, just completely puzzled when I, started up Resident Evil 4 and I started playing, and there it was. Third person, not fixed camera angles, starting to move. Like I remember it playing it on this 12-inch CRT, and I was just like, what the hell? Like, this is so weird. And it was in like my brother's room, and we set it up, and I was like, damn, this is kind of crazy. And then you just kind of get used to it. You kind of just work your way into it. But it was kind of jarring. It was a little just like, wow, this takes some getting used to. You played, at that point, I played 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica. I even played Survivor, Dead Aim I played, so, and then Zero and Remake, I played them. So I was just like so used to the fixed camera angles that it took some time. And then that became more of the normalcy for, a lot of different kind of like styles of games that you would see come around. And obviously it influenced Dead Space, Gears of War, these games that are amazing as well. And I always thought that it was just really groundbreaking. This can still break some new ground as far as it being the most polished, the most effective remake. We have, 2 and 3 as the 2 recent remakes that they kind of used as like a testing ground, right? That was kind of like the test. So with that being said, there is a lot of, pressure because a lot of people also think Resident Evil 3 Remake cut this out, cut this out, cut this out, cut this out, and it changed this and it changed that. They are reimaginings, so that's what the main incentive is, right? Where they can change the things that they want about it and switch up some stuff, and it's not an exact remake. And then some people would say, well, this reimagining can also open up the door for different things that can be approached differently, like the island, like Krauser implemented in the story, and stuff like that. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing in terms of like how they can change certain things and implement more elements of survival horror in this Resident Evil 4. I don't see why that would be a bad thing. And I know there's a lot of debate on, who they should keep and who they should cut. And I recently did a video on Jack Krauser. I'm a fan. I like Jack Krauser. I know some people don't want to see him at all. They don't really think he has a lot of weight in that story. But I think this would be a chance to kind of make it work, And even if they do cut him out, I just hope that they, put something else in there that is like, just as good in terms of like, not that Krauser was the best thing in RE4, but I want something that's, again, just like a different boss or something, because he was in there. It was kind of odd when he showed up in the game in terms of like the timing. I feel like he should have showed up more in the middle, and toward like, the tail end, he's kind of there, while you're on the island getting ready for the, you take him out before the final shootout with the helicopter and Mike, and everything. Also, hashtag bring back Mike. But anyway, I think there's a lot of different ways they can bring him in, and maybe introduce it to where it's again kind of like it could be in that knife fight, because that knife fight is so iconic, And the bosses too. Like, I really want them to bring back all the boss battles. That would be, Killer, Del Lago, El Gigante, the Big Cheese. I really want to see all of the, obviously Salazar, you know what I mean? But I want to see Vertigo, U3, which is, AKA It, but I always call it by U3 because it said that in the strategy guide. And obviously the mini bosses, and the regenerators need to be there. There's, the list goes on. Everything that kind of made Resident Evil 4 iconic was the fact that you had these brand new parasite enemies going on. Now, whether, I always thought the villagers and the cultists from Salazar's castle works the best in terms of like, yeah, they're pretty creepy. I mean, like the chanting, they throw shit, they're tough, they're aggressive. The island guys, with the stun rods, and they're all militaried out and everything. I don't know. That was kind of like it always seemed random to me when I played that game, and it still kind of does. I mean, like, I know they wanted to add more elements of like, shooting and just like, that's why you have like the different things to bring up the I guess the up the ante, right? Like get your upgrades. When you progress in the game, you unlock more weapons. There's some stuff you can find. Now I think what they're going to do with the weapons and the upgrading for Resident Evil 4 with the merchant is instead of maybe having as many weapons, they might cut some of the weapons down and maybe have more weapon parts, because they seem to be doing that in 2 and 3 Remake, is having the parts around and then you just find them or you combine them, and then you can go to the merchant to obviously upgrade said firepower, capacity, everything like that. And so there's little things that I know that they're obviously going to change, but they've had a lot of time to experiment. They've had a lot of time to learn from everything, and I think now with this Resident Evil 4, it's going to be killer. Like, it's going to be a game that I think is going to make fans really happy. It is the same team that is doing Resident Evil 2. So, and that's been fun to kind of go back and replay, which I've been doing on live stream recently for the first time in like 2 years. I'm kind of doing, runs through Resident Evil 2 again, trying to get all the trophies. It's been since the Legacy series, so it kind of feels good to go back and to play them. But, the trailer looked good. We see Ashley, we see her running, we see a little glimpse of Ada and the cultists and Sadler. The Ganados look just fantastic. I mean, this just is going to be the best they're going to look, guys. It's going to be, great AI. I'm sure they're going to be ruthless. And yeah, it's just going to be a really cool thing to see this unravel and to see more stuff about it. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the stuff with the showcase when we get there, but Resident Evil 4 was the big takeaway of the state of play. Also, Sony announced a bunch of stuff is coming to PC now, which most of their stuff will be by 2025. So there you go. All that stuff's coming to PC. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, all that stuff. So that's good. But yeah, that was the state of play. And then obviously I kind of went into work mode immediately because it was a week before I had to leave for the UK. So now I'll talk about the UK experience and the UK trip, which was just an amazing time. And I'm even going to splice in a little thing showing you some of the clips and stuff that I got from the UK trip in terms of, just little vlog type style videos that I had. And I'll splice them in, and then I'll splice them in here, and then I'll kind of talk about it more. I didn't record everything because, there was a lot more pictures and stuff that I have that Callie took. She took a lot of pictures. But, yeah, I really wanted to just, enjoy it and be in the moment and stuff like that and not record everything and every conversation and interaction with people. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to kind of experience it. And obviously a lot of the stuff in the actual meetup of Resident Evil Challenger was being recorded. So there's that aspect of it too. But I mean, as a trip as a whole, I wasn't recording everything, it was really cool just to keep your head up and look around and just really enjoy everything. So I took a little bit of the clips that I have, and I'll splice them in now. What is going on, guys? Anthony here, and I'm just doing a little check-in vlog for the trip to the UK, which we're in London right now. And I didn't record anything yesterday because it was just a day of travel and jet lag and stuff like that. And I'm going to get some more clips throughout the rest of the week because we're staying in London until Monday. And then we're going to be going to Brighton, which is going to be for the last half of our trip. So, but so far, first full day was killer. We were able to meet up with Pablo Kuntz from the original Resident Evil. He played Wesker, and we did an interview with him on the show, if you guys remember. So I was able to meet up with him, me and Callie. We met up with him for lunch. He showed us around a little bit of London. It was a really good time, and I'll put the photo right here. So that was just really cool, and able to see a couple great spots. I mean, London is beautiful. And it's so cool to be just kind of in the culture, right now, kind of getting, because like yesterday, it didn't even really feel like we were here. And then today, when we were walking with Pablo, is when it really kind of hit me. I was like, damn, like now we're in it, and it was a beautiful day. The sun was out. It's still light out right now, and it's like 9:30, which is crazy because even over in Jersey, it would be, it gets dark at like 8:30 or 9 around summer, but it gets distinctively dark. Like this, it's like it's still somewhat bright, which is crazy. And I did go to, I have a couple of things up here. We did go to CEX. I'll show a couple of these off in more of the videos. I don't want to show you everything, but here's a couple of little pickups that I got. Paying for these ports are a little pricey when you pay for them online, but there wasn't any like PS1 games there, but apparently there's a CEX in Brighton. So I'm going to have to check that out, and I'll see if there's any other Resident Evil stuff. But I got a couple more Resident Evil goodies up there. I didn't just get 6 and 5 or whatever I just showed you, or Origins Collection and 5. I got more, but I'll save that for a collection update. As well as something else I got too that's Resident Evil related, but I'll save that for the collection update. So, but yeah, so this is a little snippet clip of just, day one kind of in the books. The Resident Evil Challenger squad and gang and all the community, I will be meeting up with them tomorrow as of this recording. So I haven't met up with any of them yet, just Pablo, and, me and Callie are just trying to, see some stuff in the meantime. And it's crazy. At this point, it's less than 24 hours until the meetup, and we're super stoked. And, again, sorry for the guerrilla style video here, but, it's all good. We're making it roll. I didn't bring all of the equipment with me. I brought a couple things to record some stuff in Brighton if I have to cover the Capcom event, which is happening on Monday. We'll be in Brighton by then, and it's not happening until 11 p.m. over here. So that's actually good because I might be able to cover it, or I will cover it anyway. That's happening no matter what. But if it was happening any sooner, I would miss it live. So I don't know if I'm live streaming yet. By the time you guys see this, that event will already be over. The coverage will already be done. We're just going to keep it rolling. And any other clips I get, I will show you guys. All right, guys, today is the day. It is Saturday, June, I don't even know the day it is anymore, June 11th. And it is the date for the Resident Evil Challenger meetup. And super stoked. And we are going to be hitting up the tube in a little bit to head to the other side of London from where we're at. Not too far, it's about like a half hour away. And yeah, we'll see you guys when we're there. Going to the UK was, an incredible experience. We first got there. Thursday was a long day of travel, and then Friday was our first full day there. And I hit up Pablo Kuntz, who is in the UK, and he plays the original voice of Albert Wesker in Resident Evil 1996. And it was just amazing. It was awesome just to have that experience to, we're able to have lunch, and it was me, him, and Callie, and we were just discussing just everything, like how we've been, and, him and his son, Lexano, still doing the live streams for Resident Evil 2, and I was telling him, I'm like, hey man, he's close to 1,000 subs. He can, monetize the stuff soon. It's really good. And he's really, his son seems to be really, digging the media production stuff and doing, and he's getting really good at the Resident Evil games. And, it's just cool to see those streams. And we kind of discussed that, and it was just a great little discussion, and again, it's not something I recorded. It's not something, that, needed to be documented or anything. It felt good just to talk Resident Evil, to discuss, the fans and why, it's been going on for 26 years and why I continue to do content and what I love to do. And it was a great time. He actually got me one thing that I'll show in the Resident Evil collection update that will be coming up soon. But yes, there is just a lot of just it was unreal, to be honest. There's a lot of things that I was like, damn, this is kind of weird. And that's, Friday was the day it really hit me, because where we met up for lunch, we walked towards, towards the London Eye. We went towards, there was a few different places and old buildings that we're looking at, and these like, crazy, these just, if you looked out there, it just looked like, it didn't even look real. Like, it literally just looked like a painting. And it was incredible. It was phenomenal. He was able to kind of walk us around and show us, where to go. We actually ended up discovering the Borough Market, which was a really cool place that he didn't even check out yet. We were like, oh, what's this? And we walked around, and there was like, me, Paulo, and Callie, we just walked around like the market. It was just like, it was cool, because it was like, here I am with, Pablo, who's just so down to earth, really cool. And then I'm kind of like on the streets, of London, and everything's kind of hitting me, like we're here now, and it doesn't really seem like it was happening, and yeah. So like, again, that's why I was really excited to record this podcast, so I can kind of discuss, how I feel about that. But yeah, the Resident Evil experience that kind of kicked off everything with that first game, like everything that you have from, it's just like, it all leads up. It's like, I'm here because of Resident Evil, and it's just, yeah, all that kind of hits you at once. But anyway, we go to the market, we get some, some ice cream. There's a place you can buy meat. There's a place you can buy, candy and, honey, and just like all of these places. And it was really cool. It was almost like off the main path, and we accidentally kind of stumbled upon it, but it was like a really cool accident. Like, it was like a happy accident. And then, we shortly parted ways after that. We spent a couple hours hanging out from lunch, and then he kind of guided us, where to go towards the London Eye, and showed us London Bridge, and just like where to go and to stay. And it was a real like first day out there, and it was just like really cool. And we checked out the museum, and it was just a real cool experience. And that was all the day before the actual meetup. So once Friday started to wind down, then it was time for the actual meetup on Saturday for Resident Evil Challenger, and that was in London, and it was at a awesome venue called The Platform, which just had like a bunch of video game consoles set up. Like they were able to get a section off for just the people that were coming for the Resident Evil Challenger event. So it was just like a bunch of different games set up, not even just Resident Evil, just all game consoles alike. And yeah, it was one of those things where, again, Saturday comes, and you're still a little jet lagged because it is a 5-hour difference in the time. So that was one thing I had to like, kind of get used to that the first couple nights, but it is what it is. That's the least of your worries when you're kind of so like, wired because so much stuff's going on. That's, pretty cool. But yeah, Saturday comes, and we obviously try to sleep in a little bit and kind of get our stuff together for the meetup. And walking in there, and to see Nuji and Nathan and Izzy and just everyone, like, it was like one of those things where it was just like, holy shit, this is just, again, very unreal, very crazy. And it was awesome to see, also Andy from Biohazard Declassified was there. So not only was I amongst, all the content creators, we were all in one spot, and we're celebrating, the OGs of, Resident Evil content, not just on, YouTube, but the internet, just in general, had their own website, used to post stuff to Google Video, used to have to live stream on a completely different site. I mean, this is stuff that, really broke ground for Resident Evil channels like myself to start on YouTube and to start a podcast for just Resident Evil, and to kind of bring a community out on, YouTube, and so they started in 2005, doing this stuff before it was even really all, archived on YouTube. So they were before the main platform, when YouTube was Google Video, you know what I mean? That's how you know that it goes back a long way. But the fact that we were all there because we were all Resident Evil fans knew who they were. And, so everyone stumbled upon them at some point in the internet. You know, if you watched Resident Evil content online, chances are you've seen the challenges or you've seen clips of them. And if you haven't, then you're missing out. But you know, Resident Evil Challenger plays a really crazy role in kind of like, you know, just I've always looked up to them. I always thought that they were just, you know, awesome dudes and awesome people over there. And as they've, you know, expanded with like, you know, getting Izzy and getting more people involved and really, you know, making events like this happen where they have, you know, just a great team over there and they have a great group of friends. You know, it's just like everyone's just so nice and so welcoming. And I was able to meet so many of you and, you know, that were just fans of also, you know, my channel. And I really appreciated talking to everyone. And, you know, it was just like, again, very surreal. The night went by too fast. You know, it's one of those things where like, you don't like, you look at the time, you're like, fuck, 5 hours passed already. Like, you just don't want it to end. You know what I mean? And you're drinking a little bit. So yeah, that it goes by a little, you kind of fall into the void. But it was still really cool. It was still a really cool time. But it was just like, damn, you know, it went by really quick. But obviously I was still there for, you know, until the following Wednesday. So my trip wasn't done. But yeah, no, we were out until like 2 a.m., you know, 3 a.m. I think, because that venue closed, I think, at 1. And then we went to like another pub, and then that was it once they closed. And then we had breakfast next morning. You know, I was shot. I only had like 3 hours of sleep, you know, and it was just rough between the jet lag and being so wired from like just everything. I could not sleep. It was a great time just to kind of be in a spot where it just, you know, it just seemed like we were all just hanging out. Like we all like the same thing. We're all here because of this, you know, silly little game that was released in 1996. So, you know, that's just like one of those experiences that I'll just never forget. And there's going to be one next year, and I'm planning on being at that one as well. So if you are in the UK and, you know, you're a fan of Resident Evil Challenger, you're a fan of, you know, myself and other fellow Resident Evil content creators, and just, you know, you're friends with them and you weren't able to make it out, you know, definitely for 2023, I would love to be there for the 18th anniversary of Resident Evil Challenger. But yes, it wasn't even done yet though, because we actually had, you know, Sunday was kind of more of like a recover day, just to kind of sleep, get more sleep, a lot more sleep actually. And then Monday, Monday was when we actually went to Brighton. So Monday was when we went from London to Brighton, which is where Resident Evil Challenge, that's the origins of Resident Evil Challenger, is in Brighton. And it was like kind of, you know, coastal town, you know, kind of like a beach vibe. And the beach was actually really nice. It was beautiful, by the way. Like the week we were there, not a cloud in the skies, guys. Not a cloud in the sky. I didn't see one cloud, like in terms of like, you know, dark clouds. Like it was like clear, sunny, no rain. It was like, Nuji was like, it hasn't been this nice in Brighton in like 9 months. And I was like, wow, you know, it kind of really blew my mind. And yeah, it was just like, it was a very kind of like, just, it just kind of worked out. It was like everything kind of just fell into place, you know? And we got to Brighton, and our place was nice there. So nice that like I would actually go back there to that specific one. And it's really close to, you know, where Nuji is, and you know, it's a nice area. It's just a fucking like beautiful area. Really reminded me of like the Jersey Shore kind of, but just, you know, more British, and crazy jacked seagulls that are on steroids that will, you know, kill you if you have food out there. So we knew our lesson from Jersey, not to bring your food out. And that was the same things that they were saying over there. Don't eat out, you know, or the seagulls will just fucking kill you. You know, they'll claw at your arm just to get your food. I mean, they're savage. So yes, the seagulls were on steroids. We had a good laugh at that for, you know, the days we were there. And then Tuesday was the Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, the OG RE3, my favorite game of all time, the Dice Lock, the community Dice Lock. I think, you guys helped raise like 750 pounds or 80 pounds. It was 750 to 80, somewhere within that realm for, for charity. And it was just crazy. It was so crazy. All you guys that came by from my chat, I saw you guys in there. Thank you guys. And everyone that was in, obviously, RE Challengers chat and people that just were checking us out for the first time or whatever. Thank you guys for, donating for a great cause. And also just, wow, what a challenge. I mean, it was so good. And then it was like we started to get hit with like certain roles, and then it just went completely downhill, and we just did not win, unfortunately. But you know what that means? If we're planning a 2023 trip again, and I'm going to be in the area, it looks like we might have to do the second attempt of Resident Evil 3 Original. So that's something I'll probably keep on the back burner, because I think, that is going to be something that will be a really cool like annual thing. Hopefully we can move on to a different game if we beat RE3 or something, right? But hopefully we could do something where we can have a really good dice roll where we can win. But it was still fun, because at the end of the day we still kind of won because we got we raised a lot of money for charity, and we also just had a good laugh, had a good time. We had some crazy highlights. I can't wait to see that. And we actually lost at midnight because they were changing internet providers at the house. So it was like immediately at midnight, it was like turned off. So obviously if we had another hour, we probably would have been able to get it. Or if we, who knows, because the dice rolls could have been, completely different if certain things, changed for those events. But, guess what? That's what the dice lock is for. And you guys didn't exactly kick our ass. We actually were doing really well until we just, kind of got fucked up at the end. But again, it's all good. It was so much fun. And it was just, again, like the big incentive, though, for you guys to kick our ass or to beat us, really, was to eat a tea bag on camera. So we had to record that after the internet turned off. And so we recorded that. That's also up on the Resident Evil Challenger YouTube page. And that was so disgusting. You can see my reaction to that. I was just not expecting that. That was the first time I had English tea, and it was in the form of a tea bag. But yes, eating one straight up is not recommended. But yes, that was just such a fulfilling stream still, even though we didn't beat it. But don't worry, like I said, next year we'll be at it again, probably with a part 2 and a second attempt. But yeah, and then it was one more day to kind of hang out, and I was able to go by Nuji's new house and hang out with him one last day, just to kind of really take in the last day. It was still beautiful weather. Checked out the beach in the morning, then hung out, played some Resident Evil 2 on his OLED, which looked incredible. Crash Team Racing, stuff like that, just to hang out. And then Thursday was a long day because we had to go from Gatwick Airport in London to Dublin. So we fly from London to Dublin, and then, you wait X amount of time in Dublin, 4 or 5 hours, and then, you go there. So it was a long day. You definitely just want to get home at that point. You're tired, you're on opposite times, you're going 5 hours back when you were just 5 hours ahead. And it was just like, it was great to obviously get some rest in your own bed finally after an airport day. But I felt myself having, the post-trip blues a little bit, as you always do when things are kind of over with. But it's all good because it was such a fulfilling time. And while I was there, and I'm going to talk about this as well, now that the UK trip is, I kind of wanted to give a little segment of that in this show. It was incredible, guys. It was amazing. I loved it. Thank you to everyone on the Resident Evil Challenger team for making it special. Thank you for all the fans, the love and support. Pablo, Callie, like everyone that's just like has been just awesome, amazing by my side. Appreciate it. And the Capcom Showcase though happened the same week. I think it was that Monday night. So I did kind of skip over that because I kind of wanted to talk about the showcase itself, because that will be the last section of this show here in this podcast. And I was able to do a stream with Biohazard Declassified Andy and a bunch of other great gentlemen. I don't have all the names of everyone memorized off the top of my head, but it was a nice little crowd of people that are all content creators on their respective platforms. And I want to say, Andy, thank you for having me on. We're going to do, obviously, a podcast very soon, like I mentioned. And yeah, it's going to be really cool to, kind of do more stuff like that, do more collaborations like that. But the showcase was, again, kind of announced a week before it was announced. The Resident Evil stuff came out. And then a week after that, the Capcom Showcase was announced for a week in advance. So I was like, fuck, I'm going to be in the UK. I'm not going to stream it. And then I tried to put up a YouTube short to let people know that I will be streaming it just with, it was on everything. Use Restream so we can stream to my channel, their channel, Facebook, and it worked out. It was a lot of fun. But let's talk about the Capcom Showcase now. I want to get into that to make this the last segment for this podcast here, because that was the last little bit of information we got. And it was Resident Evil on all front. Obviously, there was Monster Hunter stuff, there was Dragon's Dogma, there was Street Fighter stuff, but the main course was Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village. And of course, the next-gen upgrades. So Resident Evil Village, we finally got an update for Resident Evil Village, and once they announced this showcase of just Capcom-specific stuff, we had a feeling that we would be seeing it. And we did get Resident Evil Village Gold Edition with the Ethan Winters expansion, and this is going to be coming with a few things. One, we get story DLC, Shadows of Rose, which is going to take place 16 years after Resident Evil Village. And Resident Evil Village has, obviously, it looked like at the end of Resident Evil Village, we saw Rose. A lot of people were expecting that to be the main character in Resident Evil 9. This is not the case. It looks like they are going to have her go into the conscience of the Megamycete, and that is exactly where it's going to take her, back to the village. So it's going to be a very interesting, a different type of game, but with a twist. It's only in third person. So the thing is now, third person also comes to Resident Evil Village with this expansion. So third person is a big deal because they actually are saying, hey, you know what? We're going to add this now. It's going to look just like the other Resident Evil Remake games that we have. And this is awesome. I think a lot of people are going to really embrace this, and a lot of people are finally playing it now because they just don't prefer to play first-person games, or they don't really play that style. Now they can actually play it. It's interesting that Shadows of Rose is only in third person, where the main game still gives you the choice of first person and third person. Now, VR is coming later. They didn't announce that. They did show that briefly. But we get all this stuff here, and the third person mode looks awesome. Now, as far as, Shadows of Rose, I don't really, I'm not too stoked on the story concept or the idea. I thought it would have been something that had to do with Chris Redfield, fill in the gaps between the years with Rose to see, where, his character is at, how old he is, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't look like we're getting that. But I don't mind them wrapping up the Winters story in this game so we can move on to something else in Resident Evil 9, but again, I'm going to play it, and I'm going to wait to judge it when I play it. I can only look at the trailer and the screenshots and give you my opinion right now, so it is what it is. But I just wanted to let you guys know what I felt about that. And another thing with Resident Evil Village Gold Edition is the extra mode. The Mercenaries is getting an update entitled Additional Orders. That means you don't just have to play as Ethan, you can finally play as more characters. We have Chris Redfield, Heisenberg, and Lady D. All of them obviously have different abilities and different things that will switch it up and make it different, but that's all I was saying when I would always kind of criticize the Mercenaries for being plural and only having Ethan. I always wanted more characters, but yes, I'm happy to say that they're adding stuff in. This will definitely make the Mercenaries more unique, a little bit more fun, innovative, hopefully. So I'm excited about that. And between that and, seeing the third person stuff, those were the two things that I thought were really, really great here. And of course, the Shadows of Rose is, going to be very interesting to check out, but I'm very curious to see where it's going. It looks like it's going to have, obviously her powers mixed with, some gunplay. So I really, don't know how they're going to spin this now that you're in the consciousness of the Mega Mice seat, and they're going to be changing, these things. There could be stuff that is, isn't really there, or it's there right now, but when you beat the mission, it's turns back to normal. Like, I don't know what this whole concept is going to be fully, but again, I'm excited that we're finally getting that. And we also got a little bit of Resident Evil 4 Remake gameplay, literally a few seconds of gameplay of it running in the engine, but they did obviously release a bunch of different screenshots along with that, and the screenshots actually look pretty good. They're just some different close-ups of Leon. You could see Leon looking in like a cabin with a bunch of things, butchered, and a bunch of tools hanging around. There's a bunch of really cool stuff they kind of put out with another press release for RE4, and it, again, looks really solid. I think this will be the last update for a few months. Maybe if, Capcom has another showcase, Sony, or Tokyo Game Show in September. And last but not least, we got the latest gen upgrades for Resident Evil 2, 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 7 on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation across the board. This was awesome. People kind of had a feeling that day that it was going to be shadow dropped, considering I think the updates were hanging around on people's consoles, and they were like, what the hell? Where did this come from? So, but I started to play it on the stream. I started to go back to do Resident Evil 2. I love it. It runs great. Obviously, I can't play it in full capacity when I stream. When I plug it into my 4K TV, it looks great. I don't have HDMI 2.1, but it still runs really well, in my opinion. So the upgrades are really good, and I figured it would kind of give me a reason to stream and go back and play these games and 100% them. So I started to do that with RE2. And I'm almost there, but it's a summer of RE. We got a bunch of stuff that has been coming out, a bunch of stuff that's been announced and released, and it's just really cool to finally see some Resident Evil stuff going on. And I think there's always going to be periods where there isn't as much stuff coming out, but October is when we're getting the Village DLC. October 28th to be exact, and then we have Callisto Protocol in December, we have Dead Space Remake in January, and then Resident Evil 4 Remake in March. So the summer of RE is kicking off now, and it's going to be me just doing a bunch of different live streams of different games, Resident Evil 4 randomizers, Resident Evil 4 dice lock, different things I'm going to be doing this summer, along with just a bunch of other stuff to keep the hype train rolling, and it is a good time to be a Resident Evil fan. So we finally got the announcements we want. Let me know down in the comments, what was your favorite from the past month? Are you looking forward to Resident Evil 4, Village DLC, all that good stuff? And yeah, that's it, and that's that, guys. Thank you so much, guys, for following me through all this stuff, all the Resident Evil coverage. There's a bunch of content you can watch on it, so I appreciate you guys returning to me for it. And thank you so much, guys. I think the next time I'll see you might be with the at least on the podcast, we'll be covering the Resident Evil Netflix show. I'll probably do a show before that on something else differently, depending on if I get it done in time. But stay tuned for next week, though, where there's going to be multiple live streams, a couple videos, and more on Let's Talk Resident Evil. So stay tuned as the road to RE4 Remake and Resident Evil Village Gold continues. Take care. A big shout out to everyone that supports me on Patreon and YouTube memberships. YouTube members grants you access to voting on content with custom badges and emojis for chats. Patreon gives you the same voting privilege, but even more. Gain access to uncut recording sessions, weekly exclusive Patreon shows, and live hangouts on Patreon. Tiers start at just $1. Thank you so much for your support, and I will catch you next time